Have you ever stood in front of an easel or, even just held a sketchbook in your lap and you're trying to capture this really stunning sunset?
Oh, yeah, it's like the ultimate trap for artists.
Right. You look up and there is this breathtaking infinite sky right in front of you. And you just want to capture that light. You want to capture the feeling of it.
But then you put your brush to the canvas and
And you just end up with this flat, plastic-looking wall of orange. It's so frustrating. We have all been there. You know exactly what you saw, but what you actually created just feels like, I don't know, a cheap Tupperware lid closing in on your painting.
it really is the most universal frustration in art. And it happens because, frankly, our brains lie to us. We fall victim to this massive perceptual error.
Yeah, because we try to paint the objects, right?
Exactly. Amateurs try to paint the objects they see, a tree, a cloud, a horse, and they try to paint the local colors of those objects. But true masters, they aren't looking at objects at all.
Which is such a wild concept to wrap your head around at first.
It is. They are looking at the invisible forces acting upon those objects. They paint light and, they paint atmosphere.
And that is exactly why we are jumping into this deep dive today. We're looking at the brilliant visual mind of the artist Laura Palacios as part of our exploration into GRUPO RAIIM.
And we really need to treat this as an elite cinematic masterclass. It's not just a basic breakdown.
No, not at all. We aren't just going to look at her painting of a bay horse in a field. We want to deconstruct the optical intelligence behind every single brushstroke she makes.
Think of it as getting a VIP pass to watch a master literally organize reality from the ground up.
Organized reality. I love that. That's the perfect phrase. Because when you study her process, you realize she isn't just, waiting around for some mystical creative impulse to strike.
Right, there's no waiting for the muse. Every single decision she makes is a highly calculated response to the laws of physics and optics and even human psychology. She doesn't just paint a picture, she engineers a visual ecosystem.
Which brings us to the very first step, which is the blank canvas. Now, for most people, a stark white canvas is utterly terrifying.
Oh, it's paralyzing.
Yeah, and the instinct is just to start aggressively blocking in the final colors you want to see. Just cover the white as fast as possible. But if you do that, you get that clashing artificial look we were just talking about.
Because you're fighting against the white. The stark white of a fresh, factory-primed canvas is actually blinding to the human eye.
It's too loud.
It is visually loud, it's unstructured, and it reflects light back at you in this completely chaotic way. So the very first profound principle you learn from watching Palacios is that you must destroy the white canvas.
You have to destroy it to control it.
Precisely. She takes a large sponge and she covers the entire surface in a very dull, earthy orange base.
Now, if you're painting at home, it is so crucial to understand that this orange is not a decorative color. Like, it's not there because the final painting is going to be orange.
No, it is entirely structural. She is establishing a thermal field.
Yes, the thermal field. I've always thought of that orange layer like the resonant wooden body of an acoustic guitar.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, because, the strings make the actual note, but it is the hollow wooden chamber that gives the note its warmth, its acoustic life. That orange gaze acts like an internal light source buried in the subsoil of the painting.
The guitar analogy is really solid, actually, but let's take it even further into the realm of optics. Imagine if the wood of the guitar could actually change the pitch of the strings.
Oh, wow.
That is what this thermal field does to the final colors. Visually, this specific earthy orange is the optical complementary color to the cool blues and greens she's eventually going to use for the sky and the grass.
So by placing core colors over a warm base, they interact with each other.
Yes, it creates what we call optical neutralization. Later on, when she applies translucent blues over this dry orange, the ambient light in the room, where you, the viewer, are standing, will physically travel through the blue paint.
It travels through the blue, hits the orange base underneath, and bounces back to your eye.
Exactly. The colors mix in your retina, not on her palette.
Yeah.
That is how she completely avoids that cartoonish, oversaturated look.
The colors neutralize each other organically. It's just brilliant.
Yeah.
So once that thermal field is completely dry, and we're going to talk a lot about the absolute necessity of drying times today, she lays down her grid.
Right. And she specifically uses a watercolor pencil for this, not a regular graphite pencil.
Which makes sense because graphite contaminates everything. If you draw with a heavy lead pencil, That gray dust just mixes with your wet paint and muddies everything up.
Yeah, a watercolor pencil allows her to build clean, invisible architecture. And once the grid is there, she begins what is traditionally called the grisaille, the underpainting.
But she does the entire sprawling landscape using only one single color, right? Raw umber, or what's known as sombre natural.
Just one color. It's just an earthy, muddy brown, heavily diluted with water.
And this is where my brain starts to break a little bit. How do you build a fully realized three-dimensional landscape, trees, hills, fields, with just one brown color? You don't have any highlights. You don't have any greens or blues.
Because you don't need them yet. In this stage, she isn't looking for colors. She is searching for a hierarchy of light. She sculpts the 3D volume using pure contrast.
So the underlying orange base is her highest value, her brightest light.
Exactly. And the raw umber is her shadow. And the genius is in how she manipulates the water.
Right, because the more water you add to the acrylic, the more translucent the brown becomes.
She uses water the exact same way you would use physical pressure on a pencil. If you want a delicate, feather-light shadow, you drown the umber in water and apply a thin wash.
And the bright orange just shines right through it.
Yes. But if you need a deep, dense shadow under, say, a grove of trees, you use almost pure pigment with barely any water, blocking out the orange completely.
And she applies it with brushes, sure, but also with a sponge, constantly discharging the excess liquid onto a rag. So she has this absolute microscopic control over the intensity.
And this is where the patience of a master really shows. Every single transparent layer of umber must dry completely before she adds the next.
Because if you get impatient and paint over wet acrylic, you just tear up the previous layer.
You create a muddy disaster. Without that drying time, you simply cannot accumulate the depth she achieves.
It really feels like she isn't drawing on a flat surface at all. It's like she's physically carving the landscape out of the canvas. You realize that forms in art aren't drawn with lines. They are sculpted out of the tension between light and shadow.
Which is such a beautiful realization. So at this point, we have this fully realized 3D structure. The hills have volume, the fields have depth. But if you look at it,
It's suffocating
it is. It's like a sculpture sitting inside a vacuum.
because it doesn't have any air yet.
Right. To give this world breath, you have to construct the atmosphere, and that dictates the sky.
Okay, this is where so many painters, myself included, completely lose the plot. We want a beautiful day, so we grab the brightest blue we own and we paint the top half of the canvas.
And what happens?
It looks incredibly heavy. Instead of feeling like infinite receding space, it feels like a heavy blue ceiling just pressing down on the landscape.
That claustrophobic feeling is caused by opacity. Opacity blocks light. If you want infinite space, you have to use transparency, because transparency constructs light.
So she tackles the sky first.
Yes, because the sky is the light source. It dictates the entire atmosphere of logic of the world she's building. And she works strictly from the top down to the horizon.
Let's look at her specific recipe for the top of the sky, because it threw me off completely when I first saw it. She uses ultramarine blue, a little bit of cream, and a tiny pinch of that raw umber. The exact same dirt brown from the underpainting.
I know, it sounds crazy.
I really have to push back on this. If I want a pristine, gorgeous blue sky, why on earth would I introduce muddy brown to it? Wouldn't it just look like a smoggy, polluted afternoon?
I completely understand why you'd think that. But this is the difference between how we think the world looks and how it actually operates optically.
Okay.
If you use pure blue right out of the tube, you get that plastic, artificial ceiling you hate. That tiny pinch of umber is a masterstroke of desaturation. It kills the artificial vibration of the blue.
Oh, I see. It grounds the color in reality.
Yes. The sky above you right now is not pure, localized blue. It contains warmth. It contains atmosphere. And as she moves down from the top of the canvas toward the middle and the horizon, she shifts her chemistry.
She switches to cyan, right? Which is a fundamentally warmer blue.
Exactly. Again, mixed with cream and that tiny touch of umber, gradually making the mixture lighter and lighter.
And she applies these layers using a large sponge in extremely thin, highly diluted washes. So we're back to that optical trick with the room light.
Yes, the paint isn't a thick paste covering up her beautiful 3D underpainting. Not at all. It's a filter.
So the ambient light in the room passes through those translucent layers of desaturated blue, hits the warm orange thermal field we talked about earlier, and bounces back.
The air in her painting is literally glowing from within.
Color isn't a paste you apply, it's a filter you build. The sky isn't painted. It is woven out of light.
But an infinite sky needs elements within it to truly reveal its immense scale. And that brings us to how she handles the clouds, which is a total masterclass in aerial perspective.
Aerial perspective. Okay, so how do you make a flat, two-dimensional piece of fabric feel like it actually extends for kilometers into the distance?
You have to understand the physics of how the atmosphere physically alters human vision. When Palacios paints the clouds at the very top of the canvas, meaning the clouds that are supposed to be physically closest to the viewer, she uses a color called Payne's gray.
To build those dark, highly structured, high-contrast cloud formations, they have sharp shadows and bright titanium white highlights. They feel heavy and close.
But when she moves down to paint the distant clouds resting way back near the horizon line, she completely abandons the gray.
She switches her palette entirely to ultramarine blue, mixed with cream and umber.
Yes. These distant clouds are much smaller, they are distinctly bluer, almost violet, and they have almost zero contrast against the surrounding sky.
Think about the last time you looked down a really long highway on a hot day, or looked at a mountain range way off in the distance. It's like looking through a glass of water that has a drop of milk stirred into it.
That's a great visual.
The further back you look, the more stuff gets in the way of your vision.
That stuff is physical reality. In nature, miles of air are not empty space. They are packed with physical density, moisture, dust, pollen, pollution.
And when light travels through miles of that particulate matter,
The physical density actually scatters the warmer wavelengths of light and cools the colors down, shifting everything toward blues and violets.
so she isn't just making the distant clouds blurry as a cheap visual trick.
No, she is faithfully translating the literal physics of the air, what we call Rayleigh, scattering onto the canvas. That atmospheric density reduces contrast and dissolves sharp edges.
The distant clouds almost melt into the air itself, while the closer clouds retain their crisp, high-contrast architecture.
It fundamentally changes how you think about drawing. Perspective isn't just lines converging on a vanishing point. Perspective is the precise translation of how the air breathes.
And if you think the physics of the air is fascinating, wait until we look at the physics of the ground. Because the exact same atmospheric laws apply to the Earth, but she executes them using an incredible manipulation of chemistry.
Oh, the chemistry of distance. This part is just mind-blowing.
It completely shifted my understanding of acrylics. So the trap most people fall into when painting a field of grass is that it ends up looking like cheap, repetitive wallpaper.
It just flattens the entire image.
Right. It's just the same sharp green texture stamped over and over from the bottom of the canvas all the way to the horizon.
Palacios completely avoids this by painting the land strictly from back to front and by wielding extreme edge control.
For the deep background fields near the horizon, she uses desaturated blues and umbers. And if you look closely, the edges of those distant fields are soft. They're hazy, almost out of focus.
But for the foreground, right up close to the viewer's feet, she uses vibrant, intense chrome greens and yellows. And the edges of the grass blades are sharp, aggressive, and highly defined.
Now, if you are just looking at the painting, your brain assumes she just used a tiny stiff brush for the front and maybe scrubbed or blurred the back with her thumb. But knowing her process, there is much more technical reason, right?
It is a massive revelation about the molecular behavior of the acrylic medium. It's not just brushwork. It comes down to water versus glazing medium.
Let's break this down because I feel like this is the secret sauce that separates amateurs from professionals.
An acrylic paint is essentially pigment suspended in a plastic polymer binder. When she paints the distant hazy background, she dilutes her paint heavily with water. Water is a solvent here. It physically breaks the cohesive bonds of those acrylic polymer chains. It forces the paint to lose its structural integrity.
So the paint literally falls apart on a microscopic level.
Exactly. The pigment spreads out unpredictably, creating those soft, diffuse, uncontrolled edges. It is chemically perfect for representing hazy, distant miles of space where the atmosphere is blurring your vision.
But when she moves to the foreground,
She stops using water entirely. She dilutes the paint using an acrylic medium, or a glaze. The medium is chemically similar to the paint itself, just without the color, so it keeps the acrylic polymer entirely intact.
it's like encasing the pigment in liquid glass. The structural integrity remains.
Yes, it allows the paint to hold incredibly sharp, crisp, hyper-defined shapes. When she pulls her brush to create a blade of grass in the foreground, the paint chemically obeys the brush. It holds the razor-sharp edge perfectly.
That is insane. It's not just a stylistic choice. It is a microscopic manipulation of the paint's chemistry to force the viewer's eye to perceive depth.
And the way she physically applies that sharp foreground texture is so rhythmic. She uses a comb brush, which has literal gaps between the bristles.
And as she pulls that comb brush across the canvas, it acts almost like a musical time signature. It leaves a mark of vibrant paint, then a gap where the underlying grisaille shows through, then another mark. It creates this beautiful rhythmic vibration.
She is constantly breaking the pattern, switching between the comb brush, a fine round brush, a liner, a sponge. She layers warm sienna and bright chrome green over the dark shadows, but she never paints a solid blanket of color.
She lets the dark, shadowy background breathe through the gaps.
Because if she painted every single blade of grass, it would look artificial. True texture emerges organically from the tension between what the artist deliberately places and what the artist bravely leaves empty.
What is placed and what is left empty. That is the essence of it. And, we've been talking for quite a while, and notice what we haven't even mentioned yet.
The horse, the entire focal point of the piece.
The bay horse. It's the title subject, the most important element. And the human urge, the absolute overwhelming temptation, is to draw the most important thing first.
Of course, we want to secure the subject, and then we figure we'll just paint the background around it later.
But if you do that, what happens? The background never truly tucks in behind the subject. The edges clash, and the horse ends up looking like a sticker that has been slapped onto a theatrical backdrop. It looks utterly divorced from its environment.
So Palacios does the exact opposite. The bay horse is painted absolutely last.
Think about the immense discipline that requires. The entire world, the thermal field, the grisaille underpainting, the atmospheric sky, the chemical depth of the earth, has to be built, dried, and perfectly calibrated before she even allows herself to touch the main subject.
But the payoff is undeniable. Because she waited, she now paints the horse using raw sienna and cream, applying thin, translucent glazes over the already dry, fully realized 3D shadow structure that she established hours ago.
And because she does it this way, the horse is forced to integrate into the exact value system and atmospheric logic that already exists.
It shares the same umber shadows as the trees. It is warmed by the exact same orange thermal base as the grass.
It doesn't sit on top of the ecosystem. It lives inside the ecosystem.
She even adjusts the volume with delicate, translucent layers to ensure the visual temperature of the horse's coat matches the temperature of the air immediately surrounding it. She is matching the frequencies.
It proves that realism isn't some sort of inexplicable magic trick. It is supreme, calculated precision. True focus in a painting is earned by deeply respecting the world built around it.
Analyzing a piece like this really forces you to completely redefine what painting actually is. We didn't just watch Laura Palacios apply colored paste to a piece of cloth.
No, we watch her organize light. It is almost mathematical in its rigor, but deeply, deeply emotional in its result. It's a journey from the very first step, destroying the blinding white canvas with that warm orange thermal field, to building the invisible architecture of the world with watery umber shadows.
And then literally manipulating the chemical polymers of the acrylic paint, breaking them apart with water to create the hazy, distant air, and binding them together with medium to create the razor-sharp grass at your feet.
All of it engineered to force the viewer's eye to feel the physical miles of space.
It is the visual intelligence of a true master. And honestly, learning all of this leaves you with a completely new lens through which to view not just art, but reality itself.
I completely agree.
I highly encourage you to take this perspective into the real world. Step outside today, or even just look out your window right now. Look down a long street or across a valley. Don't just look at the objects. Really pay attention to the fact that you are seeing the physical weight of the air between you and those objects.
Notice how the trees or buildings furthest away aren't actually their true color. They're tinted blue. Their edges are soft, almost melting into the sky.
Exactly. The atmosphere is painting your reality every single second of the day. It is scattering light, reducing contrast, and shifting temperatures.
Next time you try to capture a sunset, either on a canvas or just in your memory, you'll know exactly why it's so much more complicated than just reaching for the orange paint. Once you understand the hidden, invisible laws of light, chemistry, and perception that masters like Laura Palacios use, you will never look at the real world or a canvas the exact same way again.